Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Lloyd and I source cars for people on a professional basis. Although most of the cars I source are between £1,000 and £5,000, very often I've been asked to show something a little bit cheaper on the channel, and so I came up with No Budget Reviews, the series where we look at cars that you can buy in good condition with an MOT for under £1,000 and you can enjoy driving. We don't film this in an expensive manner, we don't use separate microphones, we don't use fluid head tripods, we don't even use a DSLR, but we do have a lot of fun.
Well, viewers. How many first-generation Hyundai Lantras do you want to see on one channel? In my case, as many as possible. And look at this colour. Such a typical colour of the mid-1990s. Obviously, we've had a couple of others on the channel before. This one is owned by Mr. Curry, who supplies many vehicles for No Budget Reviews. And this is actually, I think, one of the best ones he's ever had. It's a 1992. It's a 1.6 GLSi 16-valve catalyst with an automatic gearbox. It looks a bit different from the previous one that he had, which was a very late first-generation car. This is a first facelift one. There were actually 3 facelifts of this car in a space of about 5 years, which I think is a bit too much, really, personally. Although I love this. In fact, it's got a little Hyundai emblem embossed in there. The reason I say it's a first stage is because the very early ones didn't have the Hyundai logo in them. It was marketed in this country from 1991 to 1995, and initially this was the way that they came, a 1.6 litre engine. Other engines came along a little bit later. I love this kind of sort of American stroke Japanese style rear end with well, it's not a light bar, reflector bar there. And these are the original dealer plates, the original dealer sticker. This car's only done 41,000 miles. So you can see there, they even put like a sort of little sticker down there in some sort of fancy font there. So we open this with the key. You can open it with the thing on the door as well. But again, it's really clean. Judah said to me that he's going to keep this car, and I don't blame him at all. Right, I'm going to have to pause a second here whilst I lift the boot carpet up. Well, it's just as amazingly kind of rust-free in here as well, and we've got the original spare as well, full-size spare, of course. There's the jack and all sorts of things. The boot opening's not like the best I've seen. The sill height is good. I mean, it's right down at the bumper. I mean, if you think of the old sort of pre-facelift Rover SD3s, if you kind of want a sort of comparison in that way, the actual volume is really good, and I think you can actually fold the seats. Yes, you can. In this, there's little tags to do that, so quite practical. But as with all sort of cars like this, the kind of width of it in terms of sort of getting things in is a little bit sort of compromised, but that's what you get with the saloons. It's just what it is. I very much enjoyed the fact that the Hyundai dealer in Bridgewater was also a Yugo and Reliant dealer at the time of this car being sold in 1992. So we go into the back. In terms of the condition of the interior, the one that Mr. Curry had a couple of years ago now, well, it was a couple of years ago, wasn't it? This has a much nicer interior. The interior almost feels new. There's no missing bits of trim, there's nothing that's fallen off. It's actually pretty nice. Most of the cars I think sold in this country were GLS or GLSi or CD or CDI models, and this is no exception. This is a GLSi. No armrest here. Maybe you got that on the CD or CDI, but we do have lumbar support for the driver. This is a very comfortable seat. Actually, I'm surprised how comfortable that is. It's probably one of the reasons why he wants to keep it. Though, yeah, the problem is that we're not really in like a sort of Sierra type car. We're far more probably an escort type car here. I mean, this is evidence of the Mitsubishi Colt or Lancer or whatever you call it in your part of the world platform that this car sits upon. Early Hyundais had a lot of Mitsubishi engineering in them. It wasn't a bad thing at all. It's just nothing like what we've come to expect from them today. I very much like this fabric. It's really nice. I like the style of it. It's much as garish and a lot of fabric would become in the sort of mid to late 1990s. Little ashtrays, of course, down there. If I reach over, there we go. And electric windows as well. If you wanted a, you know, an escort of this type, you'd be looking at like a, I don't know, a Gear or something like that, or maybe an Orion really actually, for one of these. And the Orion Gear would cost a lot more than one of these. So, actually got central locking on here, manual mirrors though, so maybe they want you to buy the CDI and get yourself some electric mirrors, door open warning lights. Early kind of Korean style, so very similar to the Japanese cars of the time with the indicator stalk on the right hand side. That's the preference. In Japan, I think even to this day some cars are like that. Original branded Hyundai stereo, idiot proof controls for the heating and ventilation. One thing obviously we're missing is the air conditioning. I'm not even sure you got that on the CD model or CDI. Maybe you did. The door pockets are really, really weird. They're absolutely tiny. I don't know why they're so tiny. I mean, it's a little bit scary in a way because that sort of suggests that the doors themselves are very, very thin. So don't have an accident, viewers. That's all I can say. Just don't have an accident. Like a Proton. Don't have an accident on one of those either. It'll be much better for you if you don't have one. Spot lamps up here, which of course they work. Yes. Yes. It's fantastic, isn't it? No airbag, of course, and a very, very simple plastic rim wheel. I think if you bought the more luxurious versions, you would get a little bit more of a nice feeling wheel, but this is typical kind of circa 1990, isn't it? This kind of thing. Has like warning switch, blanked off switches, presumably things like, I don't know, fog lamps and things like that if you had a higher model. Little electric clock there, we'll have a look at that in a second. And of course just an analog odometer. So you've got lighter down there, of course. Looks like you could put like a different stereo in here or something. You could put two stereos in here. There's certainly space for one. Or maybe you want one of those cassette racks. There's also a shift lock override here for the automatic gearbox. You've got the overdrive feature here, which has been selected. And there's the button for the power or the normal modes on the automatic gearbox, which is a very strange place for it. I've never seen one like that ever before. No sunroof on this. I think you could maybe get a sunroof as an option or something. And adjustable height seatbelt, which I very much appreciate actually. Little place, like a lot of Japanese cars and Rovers as well, to put your loose change just in there. Is that lined of felt, or is it just moulded plastic? I think it's just moulded plastic. I mean, even the ignition barrel kind of looks very sort of Mitsubishi, and that's no surprise at all. Right, I think it's time to see if my secret mission documents actually fit in the glove box. Okay, viewers. No! No! Why? Why does this keep happening? I'm not impressed. Let's see if the other storage is good. Oh, there are the cassettes. Into the 80s and Graceland by Paul Simon. Excellent. Some nice classic tunes as well. Right, we'll have a look at the classic engine at the front as well, shall we? So this is a Mitsubishi engine. You can tell straight away from the old filler cap, although it says Hyundai all over it. It's an exotic specimen. It's a twin cam 16 valve engine. The 1.5 is not nearly as exotic as it. I think that's a 12 valve actually in one of these, because the earlier 1.5s in this country in things like a Proton were just a normal 8 valve, and then about 92 the mega valve version introduced with the cats and things, which was then Euro 1 emissions compliant. Clearly this being a 92, we're all ready for Euro 1 emissions, ready with the cat and fuel injection and things like that. But this is a 16 valve, so pretty exotic actually. Looks pretty easy to work on. The gearbox is actually on this side as opposed to that side, so it turns the opposite way to most engines, being this way round. Rather like the fact that in a Rover R8 of this time you have the K series and the D series engines, and they turn opposite ways, so you find the gearbox on either side depending on which of those you have. Fuse box is easily there. There's the wiper motor all exposed, brake servo, it's all sort of here, and we've got power steering. Power steering is very good in this car, I must say. That's even like a Mitsubishi Solar dipstick there, no surprise. One thing I would like probably is air conditioning, but no such luck in this one, but it's pretty normal for the time really. Okay, I think it's time to go for a drive.
I must be the only person on YouTube who's actually reviewed in contemporary times 3 Hyundai Lantras. One of them, of course, was owned by Mr. Curry, who is in the passenger seat with me today. That one didn't have an MOT at the time of recording it, so I wasn't able to drive it. This one does, and actually this one's in far better condition than the previous one. It's got the same 1.6 litre Mitsubishi engine as the other one, the white one. We think it generates 104 horsepower. It's really hard to find exact power output figures on the engines to the Mark 1 Lantra in this country. The other engine options available were a 1.5, which was in the other turquoise Lantra I drove, a manual owned by Mr. Stan Golubiski. That generates about 85 horsepower. This one feels immediately more sprightly. One of the main problems I had with Stan's car was just it was a bit slow. That engine's okay in the original Proton. It was also obviously a good choice to sell over here when the Lantra came out in 1991, because it was already in the Proton and already kind of approved for, you know, EU emissions regulations and things, and they have started to put catalytic converters on the cars and things like that, and that probably didn't help with performance so much in the Mark 1 Lantra when 1.5 came out later on in its life. 1.6 was the first engine available in our market. There was a 1.8 available as well, with 124 horsepower. So it kind of went up in little increments. Those power output things though are, I think, approximate. I'm not actually sure if those are accurate, but that's just what I've seen. Certainly with this, it's just so easy to drive. It feels rather like a Mitsubishi Lancer or Colt, and that's because it is. The platform underneath here is based on the contemporary Lancer and Colt. These little sort of country roads just near Woking are quite good for this car. The car's not massive, but it's a good size, and considering this is actually just done 41,000 miles, it feels really good. Let's just go with a bit of acceleration test. Oh, I should have gone to sport mode because there's an SLR McLaren thing behind me, and the gearbox is not happy. Oh, it's finally put it into the gear. I think we might have to recommend a gearbox oil change on this one, Mr. Curry. But yeah, if you're just pootling around town, which is probably what this car mostly did, it's absolutely fine. It's just when you put your foot down, you realise the auto gearbox isn't quite your friend. There is a sport mode for it, which I might try in a moment if this Mercedes SLR thing that's behind me, or is it an AMG? I don't know. He's trying to get too enthusiastic, but certainly that wasn't helping. In fact, there's a button. It's a button's just next to the handbrake. Let's push that for sport mode and see, you know, what tyre bursting acceleration that it offers me. Oh my, much better. Wow. or still doesn't help the fact that the gearbox doesn't like going from sort of as either second to third or third to fourth. Doesn't really like that very much, but that's okay. We'll put it back into the normal mode because it doesn't really seem to have done an awful lot. A little bit holding onto the gears more, but not really what I would have expected. Very well behaved though in terms of the road manners. They're very, very kind of easy to judge. It's easy to see, you know, where the corners of the car are. It's quite easy to reverse it. The ride's pretty good. That's probably due to the low mileage. The steering wheel is just so comically early 90s as well. It's just a little two-spoke thing, and it's all plastic, and it's wonderful. I think it reminds me of the one that was in the Corsa B that we tried on No Budget Reviews last month. So yeah, if you want to drive around town, this automatic gearbox is going to be fine, but maybe yeah, the manual, which I have tried, obviously the 1.5, that might also be a good option. Right, that Mercedes, or whatever it is, has now disappeared, and we are free to once again roam the country lanes of Surrey undisturbed. The trim levels available for the Mark 1 Lantra were L, GLS, GLSi, GLX, CD, CDI, and then there were 3 special editions. Actually, no, 4. It was SEI, Dura, Opus, and the Visage. It's like, I'd like to see your shining visage every day. It's a very strange name for it. The Opus apparently was a leather interior, so you could get it on one of these cars. Really strangely, in Indonesia, the Mark 1 Lantra was sold after the Mark 2 came in. I presume the Hyundai lost the rights to cover in Indonesia. There's the Bimantara Nenggala, most appealing name. Rather like the national car that we tried to make, the Timur, which was based on what we used to call the Hyundai Mentor, or the Kia Mentor or Cephia. But back in the 90s, Hyundai and Kia were not the same company at all. In other markets, the car was called the Lantra. I think for this country and in Australia, they reckoned the name was too close to Lotus Elan. That's why it was called the Lantra, not the Lantra. And that happened all the way through until the 3rd generation of the car in the year 2000. Apart from this gearbox being a bit weird, I think it just needs a bit of a service. Mr. Curry and I have discussed it since the incident occurred. It's okay. It just seems to go along do much in the same way as a Proton do. In fact, this feels very much like it would have been a replacement for the original Proton. Of course, that was sold in this country eventually as the Persona. I think about 1993 that came in. And actually, if you do have a Proton Persona, then I just listed my email address actually at the beginning of the video, so you can get in touch and let me have a go in your Persona. I presume that you've probably got more Persona than your car has, because the Persona is a very nice car, but I'm not sure that it quite describes what it is, rather like the Mitsubishi Charisma possibly isn't so aptly named, but we like them nevertheless for that reason, don't we? Well, viewers, is the 1st generation Hyundai Lantra a car that you should consider with your hard-earned budget of up to £1,000? Well, all the examples I've actually featured on the channel have been bought for No Budget Reviews money, sometimes at the lower end of the No Budget Reviews money. And an example like this, if Mr. Curry wasn't actually keeping this, I might kind of consider it myself. It's not quite the right spec for me though. I would need probably a 1.6 manual or a 1.8, and I would need things like air conditioning. I'd maybe want to have the CD model, so that would probably suit me, along with maybe a little bit of less of an obvious colour. This one's fine in terms of actually, you know, sort of period and everything.
And obviously you've got to check for rust. You've got to check for all the sort of things that the older Mitsubishis had problems with. You know, make sure the cam belt's been done. Check the suspension, because parts on this car, well, they're not going to be available mainly at your local Halfords, are they? It's going to be something that you need to research a little bit. But there we go. Thank you ever so much indeed once again for watching this episode of No Budget Reviews. Hopefully we'll have something equally interesting to look at next time. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment below. And thank you once again to Mr. Curry for the second time of looking at a Mark 1 Lantra.